Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today's guest, Mr. J, is absolutely fun. I enjoyed this podcast more than I can possibly explain to you. And he is a betrayal trauma practitioner. That's a mouthful. And we get into so much cool stuff from just all over the place. However, his main specialty is in relationships when you have been betrayed by someone who's very, very important to you. He can help you repair that relationship. He could help you in some cases, if necessary, separate the relationship the best way possible, help you understand things. He's a really neat guy, and there is tons of information that's super valuable in here. Please enjoy. Mr. J, thank you so much for joining us on Think Your Way to an Epic Life.
Thank you, Kara, for having me. I appreciate it.
It's going to be fun. I can tell already we're going to get along really, really well. So, your world kind of started in being a school teacher. Tell me a little bit about that path.
Yeah, so years and years and years ago, I went into basically just subbing. That's how I started this whole thing. And I'm would like to think I'm a very compassionate person. I'm also a very touchy person. My love language is physical touch. I don't know if you're familiar with the five love languages, but I got a nice wake up call early on because I was teaching third grade and I was subbing for third grade, and one of the little girls came back after lunch, and she was crying hysterically. And I said, "I'm so sorry. What's the matter?" And I knelt down, and I'm listening to her, and she said, "My my my daddy never gave me lunch money, so I had to eat pizza." And I was like, "Ooh, okay." So I said, "It's gonna be okay." And I was just kind of like, rubbing her back a little. And I got called into the office because another teacher saw me rubbing the back of a little girl, and I said, "Ooh, okay, yeah, you know what? But I understand. I completely understand it." And I was like, "Okay, if I want to get into this field, I have a lot of learning to do." But anyways, I did wind up going into teaching and eventually got certified in elementary and middle and high school and had a nice over a decade of teaching. I also taught schools in hospitals. I taught class in hospitals because even though kids are long term in hospitals, whether they have like leukemia or whatever those diseases are, it's still their federal right to have an education. And then I also taught in like juvenile detention centers where teachers would leave in ambulances. I mean, they were pretty hardcore. I've had a really nice life with teaching, and I enjoyed every aspect of it. I will say this: one of the schools I worked in was I don't know if you ever watched the movie Higher Learning, but it was pretty rough. And I will say I was there for 3 years, and all 3 years I got best classroom management. And I think the reason is because, well, there's a few reasons. Number one, I have a theater background. Number two, my childhood was you had to be a little on the verge of crazy. And so, as a teacher, sometimes what you have to do is you have to take the classroom's temperature because, if there's a fight brewing or if there's some whatever, and I would sense, okay, the air's getting a little thick in my class. I jump up on my desk and belt out some opera, and my kids would be like, "Oh, homeboy's crazy. I'm just going to turn around and do my work." And the class would be nice and calm. So I had best classroom management for 3 years, and that was just because I invited all my crazy into my teaching. But that's my teaching. Then after that, we adopted some children, and it was important one of us stay home. So I stayed home as a full time dad for another good 10 years or so.
Okay, hold
Uh,
on, hold on. That you said that just like I went and picked up a couple loaves of bread.
well,
Um, Tell me just a little bit more about adopting children.
oh, that's a process and a journey.
Yeah,
Ooh. Yeah, it is a tedious, long, necessary process. Don't get me wrong.
sure.
Um, one of the Probably one of the most challenging parts of adopting is you have to write your potential birth mother a letter before you even know who she is, met her, whatever. And you so what was interesting, Kara, is how do you even address that letter? Like, dear friend, dear hero, dear, how do you even dear what? like, so even starting that, because what you have to do is you have to say, you know, hey, this is me and this is how I was raised and this is how I would like to raise this child. So a potential birth mother who has an adoption plan will say, okay, this is the couple I want to go with, or this is the person I want to go with. That was a very interesting forget all the other stuff that we had to do, and trust me, there's a binder this thick, you know, for adoption. But writing that dear birth mother letter, that was a challenge. Like, what do you say? What's going to catch somebody to say, this is the person I want?
Yeah, I would think it would have to deal with, as a woman, just trying to put myself in that position, reading who wants my baby that I'm going to have. What would I want most for them? I would want them to be mentally stable. That would be the most important thing to me. I would think.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm going to tell you something. Since you asked, I want to say something very quickly. We adopted our son, and his birth mother chose us. She was 7 months pregnant. We met her on a Thursday. The following Tuesday, we were in our first sonogram. She did not want to know anything about the baby because that was her way of emotionally divorcing herself from the process. So, like when we went to hear the heartbeat, we had to wear headphones. That way, she wouldn't hear the heartbeat. Whenever the doctor would come in and ask questions, she would say, "I don't know, ask his parents," and point to us.
Wow.
And her adoption plan was when the baby was born, immediately take the baby into another room. She didn't want to hear the baby crying. That was her way of emotionally divorcing herself. Now, what was interesting, and I don't want to get into this long story because it's a long story, but 10 months after our final adoption, we were actually giving a talk at the adoption agency, and the birth mother was there. And so we talked with her because we didn't talk with her. So, yeah, it was a pretty closed adoption. I mean, there's no such thing as a closed adoption, but it's open with limited access, but whatever. It was a closed adoption. Um, and at the end of the talk, she went out to the parking lot to meet us. And she said, I have one question. Any guesses what that one question she had is?
Is he or she happy, or is it a boy or girl?
What did you name him? No. What's interesting, are you ready for this? Fast forward 5 years, we moved to another state. Our second adoption, beautiful little girl. Oh my God, she's my heartbeat. 4 months after the adoption, had to go to court. Met the birth mother for the first time. The birth mother didn't have a ride home, so I raised my hand and asked the judge if it was a conflict of interest if we bring the birth mother home. Judge said, okay, no problem. Talking to the birth mother on the way out to the car, and I asked her, do you have any questions for us at all? And she said, yeah. What did you name the baby?
Wow.
Yeah. Now, me, I'd be like, I want to know religion. Do you plan on hitting this child? I mean, oh my Lord, the questions wouldn't end.
Yeah. But yeah, but if you were somebody who had given away a child for adoption, you would want to know the name just in case you ran into somebody that looked like you someday. And
I
you,
get it.
I guess, I don't know. I mean,
And I don't judge, obviously. It's just very interesting that there was one question and both of them were the same exact question.
and that would have not been something I think I would have ever thought to ask. Just would not have occurred. But wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. So you're going along. You decide you want children. You jump through, and I've got a friend who has adopted, and some of the most heart wrenching things where she actually got a child and then they took it back.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, like it is not for the faint of heart. You did it. It worked out really, really well. What's next?
So I stay home and which, by the way, I just want to tell you very quickly, our daughter's birth mother never knew she was pregnant until she went into labor. And I just say that because a lot of people are like, I can't understand that. I can't almost believe that. But she told us, this was in court when we were driving her home from court. She said, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I called my best friend and I said, I think I'm pregnant and I think my water just broke. Can you take me to the hospital? And she went into the hospital and the doctor said, you're 4.5 centimeters dilated. We need to take you in and whatever. She said, never until she woke up in the middle of the night did she ever even have a clue And I asked her questions, and I don't know how in depth I can get on this podcast, but I said, no dysregulation in certain areas, no cravings, no what. And she said, no, nothing at all. And I was like, no tenderness, no nothing. So anyways, I just thought that was interesting, but it was a blessing in disguise because that helped her emotionally divorce. Basically what happened was she went to the hospital, she delivered the baby, she signed the rights away right over to the hospital, she left and went onto her life. So that's when we got a call from the hospital immediately saying, hey,
Got it.
interested in the little girl? I was like, we'll be there in a minute. Our nursery changed from all boy and blue to pink within 40 minutes, and we were running to the hospital.
Right on, right on. That is such a cool story, and I know we're totally off topic here,
I
but
know.
for guys, adoption is a really, really wonderful option, and it is something that adoptive parents are, they didn't just, oops, that was an accident. They desperately want to raise a person. They want it. And so please keep that in mind, and know that you'd be blessing somebody's family in a big, big way, not to
Yeah,
mention your own child,
your own. Yeah.
because that's a heart child.
100%. And really quickly, even if somebody doesn't have the capacity for whatever reason to adopt, just to foster, we fostered hundreds of kids, and it I'm confident we planted wonderful seeds and changed the lives of many kids. So there's nothing more sad than hearing from a social worker, we have no more homes and the kids got to sleep on the floor of the building of our workspace. So many homes are needed for foster kids. But again, we digress.
Yeah, well, I think we could talk for hours, man. You're a brother from another mother. You're also an international speaker. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So basically, what I used to do before COVID was I would go around and give these talks. A lot of the talks at school, having been around school as a teacher, um, bullying is a big problem. The teen years are a big problem. Family support is a big problem. The teaching field in general, education is a big problem. So I just really brought all this experience to schools, and social media is a big problem. And which, by the way, I'll tell you a side note. Do you know the average teen right now spends 9.5 hours a day on social media? The average teen. Now that's not all at once, but with how much they spend on it, watching shows, playing games, doing social media, 9.5 hours. And what's sad is that sometimes when you're sitting like at a restaurant or a diner and you see like these young kids with their grandparents are on limited time. I mean, really, well, we all are, but and here they are on their phones, the kids doing this. And I'm like, you are wasting precious time, precious time. Now, let me just say this. And again, I'm off on a subject that we never wanted to talk about, but just very quickly, there's blessings and burdens of social media because, yes, social media is wonderful because it brings people that are far near. And I love that. But we got to be careful because it also brings families that are near far. How many times do you invite friends and family over and everybody at first, hey, hugs and kisses. It's been a while. I love you. I love it. Next thing you know, you're looking in the living room and everybody's on their phone. It's like, well, wait a minute. What happened? Oh, I miss you and I love you. So you really got to have social media work for you instead of having, you work for social media. Anyways, I digress. I used to go to
You're doing
schools and,
great.
and talk and give speeches about, parental involvement, family support, what the schools can do, but really talk a lot about self-love, self-worth, self-image with the kids, and bullying, and things. And I can speak on that topic because I'm not proud of it, but I was a bully in school. I wasn't bullied. I was a bully in school. However, a lot of that had to do with my childhood, which maybe we'll get on at some point. So that's what I did. I talked a lot. Now, ever since COVID, that has the door has shut almost. Now I do go out and speak still, but not like I have before. Now, what I do is I'm on Skype and Zoom and all this other stuff, and I'll talk to corporations or businesses or schools or whatever. I'd love to get back into face to face. There's nothing like it, but
There's
there's a lot
nothing.
of things. We're still coming out of these COVID year days, even though it's been a few years.
Yeah, it has changed our world so so horrendously, and there's blessings and curses, like you said.
Yeah.
We couldn't be doing this right now. We couldn't be sharing your story with unlimited amount of people if we hadn't gotten used to this is our norm, is that we do
Yes.
these kind of things. So that's pretty cool. So tell me about your children's book.
Okay, so basically, my children's book, which is interesting because it has a lot to do with my teaching years, but really nothing to do with my current career. So, but my when I started teaching, family dynamics looked very different. Like 90% of my kids came from a home with a mom and a dad. When I ended my teaching career, less than 10% of my kids came home from a home of mom and dad. It was either a single parent, maybe a grandparent, maybe they were raised by their uncle or aunt, maybe it was the foster parent, whatever. And I remember complaining to the administration one time, like, I want to read my kids' books, but they can't identify with these because all these books are, mommy and daddy did this and mommy and daddy did this. And some of my kids have two moms or two dads, and some of my family have no parents. Like, can we have some money so we can look into some more books? And no money, no money, no money, no money, no money. So I was in the lunchroom one day and I was like, ding, 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 write one. And so that's what I did. And I shopped it around for an author, and anyway, it's on Amazon. It's been doing very good with phenomenal reviews, phenomenal reviews. And that's what I brought into my school. And now my kids were more interested because, my book goes into, if you were raised by an older sister, or if you were raised by a foster family or whatever, now my kids can relate and identify with that because a lot of my kids were raised by their siblings or an aunt or an uncle. They didn't come home from a family of mom and dad. So that was my book, and like I said, it's still on Amazon. It has great reviews, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I am loved right where I am, and I love
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
I am loved
Yeah,
right where I
because I
am
want all
because
kids to know that, listen, you might have chosen your life, but absolutely life was spoken into you, and you are loved no matter where you are.
yeah, yeah, people do need to hear that. Um, okay, so a couple quotes of yours that I absolutely love, and I'm not going to just look at the camera. I'm going to read them, but so I don't mess them up. With hard work and willingness, you can still have your happily even after. Translate that for me.
Yeah. So, a lot of what happens is I hear in my field, do you know what I've been through? And I tell people all the time, you had very little to no say in your past. And I understand that, but you have all the say in your future. I also talk to couples, and primarily because I'm a betrayal trauma practitioner, the majority of my clients and couples have endured a primary betrayal, and 9 times out of 10, that's with their partner, their spouse. Now, a primary betrayal could be from your parent, from your boss, from your child. It's anyone that you get something from, you need that connection with. There's also, you could have a primary betrayal from yourself or your creator. I worked with a lady one time when she was like, Mr. J, I exercised and I ate right and I did all my healthy things, and I was still diagnosed with breast cancer, so I feel like my body betrayed me or my creator betrayed me. But betrayal trauma is trauma from a primary attachment. And so what I tell people all the time is, even if somebody steps out of a relationship, let's do a good hard look at the why they did that. Not that we ever excuse it, rationalize it, justify it, because we don't, period. But we do try to understand it. And if both parties are willing to work on forgiveness, work on reconciliation, and work on rebuilding, you can come back together and have your happily even after.
Man, that to me sounds like a miracle. Like seriously, I mean, it does, and I know it's got to be possible, or you wouldn't be in business, and you wouldn't be telling me, you know, that 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 this is what you've done. Um, uh, Walt Disney said, it's never too late to have a great childhood. And you're saying it's never too late to have a great marriage. It's never too late. No, no matter what's happened, if you guys both are really committed to this, with some help and some coaching and guidance, we can help get you there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although I'm going to tell you something. I tell people all the time, um, it's not me, really. It's not me at all. Like I can steer your boat into calm waters. I'm confident in my skills, but you got to be the one rowing until your arms are ready to fall off. And I'm telling you something. What I mean is that you need to be ready to row until your arms are about to give out and fall off, and you're in tears and say, I can't do this anymore. That's where we begin the hard work.
Yeah. Thank you for being so incredibly authentic with that. You're not saying for 3 easy payments of $29.95 everything's going to be just fine, right? No, it's not. And that's the thing. I think that's the probably the biggest reason people won't work on themselves. They won't go back and fix childhood traumas, is because it's scary and it's yucky. And um, why should someone, whether they had a great, let me ask you about this. If someone had a really hard childhood, this makes a lot of sense. What if somebody had a good childhood?
Well, here's the deal. Listen, we all have our coping mechanisms. We all have our tools. We all have our experiences. We all have our examples. And so regardless of where you come from, we all need to be tweaked in some areas because even if you come from let's just say you come from a family and your mother just loves you and gushes over you and kisses you and hugs you and wraps her arm around you and compliments you. Oh my God, who wouldn't want that? But what happens is that if you are raised into believing that's what the expectation is that you're going to get from your partner, and then you don't, it's like, so no matter if you have a completely dysfunctional, abusive, toxic relationship or the best of the best, we're all going to have to hone in some things and look at, okay, I mean, shadow work. I don't know if I should get into that or whatever, but get into our demons, and get into our insecurities, because the other thing too, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going on a big long tangent. One of the things that I say with trauma is it's not what happens to you, it's what your nervous system, how it responds to it. Because you and I can walk outside and see a car accident, and I could be traumatized and you're not necessarily traumatized, because we all have different tools, coping mechanisms, different support systems. You might have great friends you can go to, a great church you're plugged into, great meditation practices, and I don't. And so you're ahead of the game. So everybody really could use some tweaking in all areas.
Yeah, no question about it. I was at a Date with Destiny, one of Tony Robbins' seminars that he does.
Yeah.
And he had this woman up front, and it's actually the one, I'm Not Your Guru, so you can watch it on Netflix. But he had this woman who was breaking up with her boyfriend, and he starts asking her about her father. And he says, "What was your dad like?" And she's like, "Oh, he treated me like a queen. I was a princess." And he did, she just goes on and on and on about how he had her, like what you're talking about, had her on this pedestal. And Tony looks at her and he says, "That asshole." And she's like, "What?" And he said, "He taught you that you have to do nothing, that you have to do nothing in a relationship and everything is just going to come to you." And that's not reality. No man could ever live up to that. So,
Yeah.
moms, you're doing that to your sons. Dads, you're doing that to your daughters. Don't do that. Don't make their expectations so high that they'll never be happy when they're outside of your home.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's hard? Listen, I think well, okay, I shouldn't say all parents, because we do have the Susan Smiths out there, but I think the majority of the parents don't bring kids into the world to hurt them or to abuse them, whatever. But the pendulum always does swing to the extremes. Like, my parent did this, so I'm going to parent my kids this way. Now my kids are like, I didn't get this, so I'm going to do that. The pendulum, what we have to do is say, okay, listen, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere along the. But here's the deal. Even if there's a happy medium, kids respond differently, which is why you can have a house of 7 different kids being raised by both the same parents, and all of them come out completely different. So it is very interesting. Everybody is unique. But I'll tell you something. I think one of the reasons people don't look into professional help, and I get it, who wants to run into pain? We want to run away from pain. So I get where people are like, I mean, we mask it in all these disguises. I'm not going to tell a stranger my business, or I don't have the time or the money. We mask it in all these different things. But really, nobody wants to run. Nobody wants to walk themselves into the slaughterhouse. But I'll tell you something. The reason why it's important to walk yourself into the slaughterhouse is because the slaughterhouse is like mining gold. When you mine gold, gold comes out in these chunks, but it's got all kinds of dirt and debris and yuck in it. And you got to put it through the fiery furnace. And what happens is all the bad stuff rises. And this is what coaching and counseling is. When you're there and then you wipe off that bad stuff, and then more dirt and debris and yuck comes out, and then you wipe it off. But eventually, you know what arises? Pure gold. And that's why coaching and counseling is effective.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Really, it's such an appropriate description of it, because most people, please correct me if I'm wrong, most people are not going to come to you until it's so bad.
100%.
And they could have saved themselves lots of hurt, that they hurt each other again and again and again, if they just would have said, stop. And this might be sexist, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I believe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's usually the men who are saying no.
Yeah.
The women are more likely to say, yes, we need help.
Yeah. If you break down, there's certain genders that are more resistant. There's certain races that are more resistant. There's certain cultures that are more, so absolutely, but you're spot on with the genders. Yeah. It's always interesting. A lot of times, a guy will come to a session and be like, my wife forced me to talk to you, and I don't believe in this, and what. And then after 20 minutes and he's crying, he's like, I never realized how badly I needed to do an introspection and a reflection and stuff. So you're right. Yeah. Men, and you know something, I won't even blame men. I mean, I can, and I will to a certain degree, but it's our society too. And I'm going to tell you something, Kara, I'm to blame too. And you want to know why? Because you know what I noticed? When we come home from the grocery store, I have to be mindful, because you know what I caught myself doing? Telling my son, bring in all the groceries, while my daughter goes in and, sits on the couch and lies down and watches social. So I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. So as a culture, we all raise boys to work, suck it up, do the hard work. I'm going to tell you something. It took me years, but you know what I tell my son now when he's emotional? I'll say, be a man. Be a man. And you know what that means? It doesn't mean don't cry. It means be a man. Honor your emotions. If you got to cry, cry. Be a man.
Right on. General Schwarzkopf once was asked in an interview about that he had cried about something, and the woman said, weren't you afraid that would make you look weak? And he said, I would be afraid of a man who couldn't cry.
If I was That's pretty tough, dude. I'd say preach. Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty tough, dude. Whew. Okay. So if you're a mom or a dad, what would you say? How do you do it so that you're not having the boy carrying all the groceries and the girl go do the laundry, or whatever stereotype that you want to use here? How are you conscious enough to make it level?
Well, listen, and herein lies the $6,000 question, is because once you are conscious of it, it's relatively easy to make those changes. It's just getting conscious of that. And I think as a culture, we are moving more into that era. I mean, the last statistic I read, I think it was 51% of all CEOs in America were female. So we are balancing the system. But I listen, I want my son to know how to wash dishes and do laundry just as much as I want my daughter to know how to change a car tire. And I want both of them to, because listen, if they ever get married and they want to have these traditional roles, fine, I will respect, but I want you to feel empowered that you don't need anyone. You'll find somebody that's going to complement you. So that's
Go,
my
Dad,
story. I'll
go.
stick into it, but
Go, Dad, go. And that is the thing. And it might sound bad to some people that you're making yourself so that you don't need anyone. But the thing is, guys, when you make yourself so that you don't need anyone, that's when you want to serve people more, when you are more complete.
yeah, Kara, I just want to say this. So, on top of the many different things that I do, I'm also a wedding officiant. So I will marry, couples. And one of the things that I often think about now, I offer premarital coaching, but that's just an offer. It doesn't that nobody has to pay for those services or get them. I will still happily marry somebody if they want to just get married. But one of the things that I'm often thinking of, Kara, when I'm standing in front of a young couple, I'm thinking to myself, they're exchanging I do's and are clueless to the who the I am is. Because what you just said about having to go into relationships with need, the majority of people, and this is the majority of people, go into a relationship with our own baggage, thinking I'm going to find somebody that's going to help me with this baggage. What they don't realize is the other person has their baggage and they're expecting you to help. They don't have time, energy, or emotions or the capacity to help you. They got their own stuff and they're expecting you to help them. Then all of a sudden, after I do, and the honeymoon phase ends, it's like, okay, you're going to help me now. No, I got my own crap I never dealt with. And herein lies the issues.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy our perspective. Stephen Covey really had it figured out with his 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. And people don't even do that with somebody they're about to say I do to,
Yeah.
and promise to God and all the world that you're the only one until death do us part. I will never ever. Well, maybe you ought to take a little bit of time and try and understand who that is, who that person is that you are creating a family with. It's a
Oh,
big
yeah.
deal.
Oh, yeah. I tell people all the time, listen, you're not ready to get married if you want to find somebody to take care of you for the rest of your life. You're ready to get married when you are ready to take care of somebody else for the rest of their life. Because, and I'm not going to get all spiritual and biblical, but it does say you have to lay your life down for others. And what does that mean? That means when we're ready to get married, we're ready to set aside a lot of us, not compromise who we are, nothing like that, because I still believe in autonomy, individuality, me time in a relation. I've been married 22 years. I'd like to think I know a little bit about what I'm saying. But at the same token, you need to lay your own self down, your pride, your wants, your needs, your desires. Doesn't mean you ignore them at all, but it means that I'm here because I'm vowing to take care of somebody for the rest. But here's the deal: if both people are getting up in the morning, tripping each other's foot, trying to do for the other, pride can't come in, and that's one of the biggest relationship killers nowadays is pride.
I think it kills so much, so much. It's a bad deal. One of my other favorite quotes from you is, "We are all beautifully broken, but even a broken crayon can create a masterpiece." That's so cool. And it's so true. And as a podcast host for over 2.5 years, I have gotten to see the most broken people and be honest about it, because the most broken people can't be honest about being broken until they're unbroken, and then they can tell you. And you look at them and you're like, oh man, you've got it together. You've had it together the whole time, Mr. J. You've never had a problem because you're an overnight success, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, but you know something? It was the same thing when I was working with kids. I worked with a lot of inner city kids, and they'd be like, why should I listen to you? You're a white man with a button down shirt, whatever. Nobody knew the horrendous abuse I went through, the fact that I was homeless at 14. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on. But you're right. And what's interesting, what's really interesting is when I'm talking to like my coaching clients, I mean, when I'm talking to like somebody on the podcast or somebody in the professional world, and I understand that, hey, what's your experience? What's your degrees? And I tell them all about my degrees and my diplomas and my this and that. But I'm telling you something, the best diploma, the best degree that I have in my field is my doctorate from the School of Hard Knocks. Because
Amen.
people, when I'm working with people, and don't get me wrong, I got degrees up the yang. I mean, I'm credentialed, no problem. But no, my clients don't care about that. My clients want to know, have you been in my shoes and can you get me out of my hell? That's what they want. you know.
Yeah. Like Ed Milet has made famous, the person you can help is the person that you used to be.
100%. Yeah. Yes. And this is what I tell people all the time is, because I got myself here with the help of others, and I want to lead other people out of hell, but I want you to be so strong and confident that when you're walking out of hell, you turn around and help give the ice water to the person walking out behind you. That's what I want to do. But I just want to say this. Have you ever heard of the term? I think I could be butchering the term, but I think it's called Tinsuki. It's a Japanese term. What it is pottery. What they do in a lot of these some of these cultures in Japan, when pottery breaks, what they do is they glue it back together with gold because it's in the brokenness that's our beauty. And so this is why I say we're all broken or bent, whatever. If people don't want to say they're broke, that's fine. Then you're bent. We're all bent or broken in some way, but it's in that we're beautiful, because think about it. We all have a light in us, right? And if we have no brokenness and no cracks, how is that light going to shine through? So it's in our cracks and brokenness our light shines through if we do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, and guys, it is it's tough, and I avoided it. I will admit, I am as a coach. I've admitted it on this podcast more than once, and it's embarrassing to admit, but I used to really believe you just leave that stuff back there. If it's back there and it's not, and you're successful, you just leave it back there. Well, guys, it will come back and it will bite you in a way that you cannot ignore until you go in and you dig it out and you deal with it. And I will tell you, it's not as I was just working with a client yesterday. I did an all day session, and at the end of it, he said, it's not as painful as I thought it would be. And it's really not. I mean, we have it built up to where you're going to go back and you're going to be that little kid and you're going to have to physically live through. It's not like that. It's not pleasant. It's not like, oh yeah, this is a party, but it's oh so worth it.
And I just
So
want to say quickly, the degree of pain of any session also often equals the degree of freedom. So there might be some pain, but the payoff is the freedom.
yeah, and who doesn't want freedom? My goodness. So, Mr. J, this is Think Your Way to an Epic Life. So, what tips or tricks do you have for our folks to think their way to their own epic life?
So, okay, a couple things I just want to say is I always say people give us pain, but we give ourselves suffering. When we're walking down the street and if a snake bites us, what we love to do, and we all love to do it, is we like to pick up that snake and enter those fangs into our bloodstream 400 times. Why? The snake bit us. The snake's going to give us pain. We have to stop that poison from getting to our heart. So, when somebody does something to us or says something to us or treats us wrong, absolutely deal with it. Don't, ignore it, and don't dismiss it, and don't minimize it. Deal with it head on. It's going to be painful. However, after that, don't give yourself suffering because of it. And I'll tell you something, our worst enemy often is between our own ears. We have to really constantly check our internal dialogue. Constantly, because our mother or father could have told us once when we were 5 something, and what we heard was, you're not pretty, you're not worth, you're not valued, you're not. And how many times did we play that broken record over the decades and over the years? So they gave us pain, but Lord knows we gave ourselves suffering. You have to check your internal dialogue. And one of the first ways to do that is boundaries. A lot of people think boundaries are for other people. No, boundaries are for ourselves. Boundaries are like religion. You don't have boundaries because you want to force other people how to. You do it to hold yourself to a standard. But one of the things I always start with is internal personal boundaries. What does that mean? I no longer will tolerate the negative internal dialogue that I'm worthless. Those are internal personal that's where we start with right there. Other than that, I am a big believer in self-care. And listen, if that means going and get your hair and nails done, fine, great, and dandy. But it also could just mean that, you know what? I'm going to take tomorrow off and be at home. And listen, if your friends or family try to call you because they want something, keep in mind, just because you're free doesn't mean you're available. Your me time is for you. Everything in your cup is for you. Everything overflowing out of your cup is for everybody else. So self-care is not vanity, it's sanity. You can be selfish and self-centered with some of your time if it's going to give you some chicken soup for your soul. I mean, I can go on and on, but
No, no, and that you need to go on and on about self care, really, because and again, I know I just men and women are different. I think women in general resist self care because they want to be more martyrs, more like,
yes,
yeah,
they're
but look at
caretakers.
what I did.
Yes, they're caretakers. Listen, even if you go back to the hunter-gatherer days, okay, um, a woman's job was was a lot. They had to not only raise the kids, they had to make sure the house was clean and warm. They had to hang pictures. They had to make sure the family was all getting along. So there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of talking. There was a lot of conversations. What did the men have to do? Go out and shoot a deer, bring it home. That's pretty much the gist of it. So when a lot of times if I'm talking to a male female couple, it's so funny because they'll be like, why does she always have to talk to me so much? Oh my, I just want to come home from work and just, have a beer and sit in front of the TV and watch a sports show. She's always, and that's in her DNA because from biologically, from the get, women had to make sure, is anybody suffering in my family? Is anybody in pain? Is anybody dysregulated? Because it's my job to make sure the house is copacetic. That's a woman's job. But the other part of that is they're so often spreading their hen wings to protect their family that they neglect their own needs. So women absolutely. I mean everybody, but women absolutely. Self-care is not vanity, it's sanity.
Yeah, ladies, please, and gentlemen too. I think everybody works way too hard and they're running way too hard, and you've just got to stop, guys. I mean, even if it's just for 2 minutes a day, and just breathe and meditate and just be quiet and give yourself a moment
And
because
I
it's
agree with you
crazy.
100%. And you are right. Now, I'm going to tell you one of the issues with that is, you know what? And this is why depression skyrocketed during COVID, because a lot of times we don't want self-care because what that means is we have to pull back and relax and we don't want to stop. We want to continue and numb and distract and avoid because if we stop, a mirror gets in front of us and then we have to start thinking of our issues. We don't want to do that. Me time is complex too because even though we need it, we don't want to stop because then a mirror's in front of us, which is what happened at COVID. We all stayed home from school and from work and whatever, and depression skyrocketed because a lot of people were looking in the mirror and they did not like their reflection.
Yeah, I have had people tell me I'm terrified to be alone. I
Yeah.
just, I can't be alone with myself. So I keep myself really busy or drunk or whatever, whatever it is that masks that for you. And it's a horrifying place to be, guys. I mean, really take some control and don't wait. Don't wait until it's too long. So if somebody wanted to do just a discovery call with you, is that something that you do?
So this, let me just say this: if anybody ever wanted to get a hold of me for any reason, I have the easiest website. It's mrjrelationshipcoach.com. But let me just say this: even if somebody never wants to see my face, hear my voice, talk to me, whatever, my website has a decent amount of free resources. So even if somebody goes and, I have podcasts up there, I have YouTube videos that I upload for free. I'm on all kinds of social media. I have articles, I have resources. Like I said, even if nobody ever wants to talk to me or see me or have a session with me, just go to my website and take advantage of my free resources. But yeah, I'm happy to. I like I said, my niche is betrayal trauma, so I work with a lot of couples that have had betrayal in their relationships, and it's funny because it's a whole other thing, and I won't waste your time. I never sought out this field. This field sought me out. It was very interesting how this all happened, but I'd like to say I'm pretty decent at it. I love it. It's my passion. It feeds me. A lot of my colleagues, when I talk to them, they're in the shower at night crying because it's a heavy field. But let me tell you something. I'm in the shower at night whistling Dixie and I'm happy because I know I made a difference in somebody's life that day.
Right on. That is what it's about right there. It's the most rewarding thing in the world when you're when you should be doing it and when you're the one that should be doing it. And oh my goodness, it is, ha,
Yeah. And I
it,
always say we don't find our passions, we don't find our calling through our passions. We find our calling through our pain. Once you have walked in the trenches and there's nowhere else to go but up, that's when you start climbing that mountain, but you take others with you around you. So I'm going to be honest with you. My clients are helping me just as much as I'm helping them. Now, obviously, I never use my clients as my own therapy, but absolutely, when I feel and see a success or even a change, then it makes all the hell that I lived through more understandable.
Yeah, I feel you 120%. It is so true. It is so true. And when you've been through that hell, guys, what drives somebody like Mr. J is when you've been through that you can't stand to see people suffer, and you know you have answers, and you know you can help them, and you'll stop at nothing to do that. However, he can't want it for you more than you do. He can't. And so if you're going to come to him and say, oh, this is all a bunch of bull malarkey, blah, 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 and have an attitude, just don't even bother. Just don't waste his time. Once you hit rock bottom, then you'll be ready to give him a call. So thank you. My goodness, this has been very fun. I have enjoyed every minute of it. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Well, I like boating and fishing. No, I'm just kidding. Do you remember those old 80s dating apps? I don't know if you remember that. People would get on and say, I like boating and fishing and all this other stuff. I don't know how people survive. I don't know how people survive dating nowadays, to be honest with you. But speaking of dating, I will tell you this. We date on the level of our self-esteem. So for anybody listening, if you're going into the dating pool, be very, very careful, because a lot of times we go into the dating pool when we're in a low place because we want to find somebody and be happy and hold hands and run to the sunset and flowers and rainbows. But really what's happening is our self-esteem is so bruised because we're in a low space, then we start settling. And all you're doing is asking yourself for some trouble, So just try to work on your self-esteem as much as possible, before you get into the dating realm. But anyways, again, I digress. No, one of the things I just want to say all the time is this. If anybody out there listening has a picture of your younger self, I don't care if you're 3, 4, 5, I don't care if you're 8 or 14, please get that picture, put it on your steering wheel, on your bathroom mirror, whatever. And every single time you walk by your younger self, give yourself a high five, and more so important, compliment yourself. Hey, beautiful, you and I are going to do this thing called healing in life. I got you. I got your back. I might not have had a voice for you before. Might not have the tools before, but I got your back, and you and I are going to rock this thing called life. You're awesome. Make sure you tell your younger self that all the time.
Man, that started a whole new podcast. I think that you're going to have to come back. Would you be willing to do that?
Would love to.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been incredible. Appreciate you. Oh, and guys, if you do want to talk to either one of us, if you just have a comment, the best way to do it is on YouTube. So you can comment, and either one of us can respond to you. If you're listening, we don't really have a way to do that if you're like on any of the podcasts that way. But on YouTube, we can talk back to you. So we'd love to hear your input, and if you can shout out and say thank you so much, because this was very valuable information, and I appreciate it greatly.
Thank you, Kara. Appreciate it.
You got it.